This is Delay of Game,
a sports talk podcast. Available on YouTube and online at thedelayofgamepodcast.wordpress.com.
All right, wait a minute, before we get this going, where's the music here? Oh, yeah. This is great. Welcome in, special podcast edition of a Super Bowl recap with Matt Rigby. That's really what this is all about. It's really about Matt Rigby here in this one. So we didn't have a show last week because Matt Rigby was on the road. He was actually in Santa Clara at the Super Bowl. I had an event here in Lincoln, so, couldn't do it. And this podcast basically is a recap of Matt's adventures, the Super Bowl, thoughts in the game, halftime show, Peyton Manning, all that other fun, wonderful stuff. Matt Rigby, how was the Super Bowl, my friend?
Well, I'm a champion, first of all. I've been singing Queen for, what are we on? We're on Sunday? 7 straight days.
7 days, yeah.
7 straight days.
It'll be almost 7 officially by the time nightfall rolls around. I'm
a champion. I'm the artist formerly known as Matt Rigby, now known as Super Bowl champion Matt Rigby for the rest of my life. Just kidding. I didn't play in the game. I feel like I did. I felt like I did after the game. Man, I had not conditioned myself this year. I was in danger of having this be the first year in 6 years that I didn't go to a Broncos game.
Wow.
So I was not conditioned to deal with the rigors that come in with being a fan at an NFL game if you're rooting for one of the teams.
Right.
And I say that also because, and this was probably the first thing that jumped out to me, Broncos fans were 5-1 throughout the city, throughout the stadium, throughout the region. And so, like, we were able to kind of, I felt, make an actual impact on the game as opposed to the crowd being split 50-50. Well, maybe not even. It would be 40-40 with 20% people who don't care and just want to spend their money. I felt it was more like 65% Denver fans. So every time the Broncos were on defense, the stadium got pretty loud. And I felt like, especially in the pockets of the stadium where the Bronco fandom was more concentrated, which was on our end, I felt that affected Carolina. You saw some false starts with Carolina. You saw some procedural penalties, a couple delay games that you didn't really see with the Broncos. And I don't think it was a matter solely of discipline. I think it was a matter of the fans being slanted. And I think even the neutral fans were rooting for the Broncos. We had a lot of neutral fans around us, and I think it was just a Peyton thing. They were all rooting for Peyton.
And I was watching on TV too, and I could see. I even tweeted this out. It's like there's a lot of orange at that stadium because they just they of course those cameras everywhere, and they're taking shot after shot. And I'm like, there's a lot. I mean, it can't be the sun. The sun cannot be like deceiving me. And it wasn't. There were a lot of Broncos
what did you
fans
think if each of you had to take a stab at what the reason is for that? What would your guess be?
Well, location one,
right.
because Carolina's on the other side of the country from
I thought location as well, but
that's a big factor.
But I think the bigger part of it was I think that there's this had never struck me before, but I think that there's a tradition element that goes into it. Like the Panthers are born of that 90s teal-colored jerseys generation. The Jaguars, the Panthers. I can't think of another team off the top of my head, but those types of teams that were born in the 90s.
Right.
And while they have a fan base, I mean, every NFL team has a fan base, but while they have a fan base, it never struck me that like the NFL actually does have some programs. I'd say programs like it's college football, but some organizations that are steeped in tradition, really. I mean, I did not realize this, but first of all, the Broncos are an AFL team that's over 50 years old. They were pre-merger. they're also basically the only ticket in town. I mean, they're not the only ticket, but they're the main ticket in town in Denver. And they are always good. I mean, the Broncos, I saw this about John Elway. In his 21 years as either a coach or not a coach, as either a player or an executive for the Broncos, in 21 seasons, they've been to the Super Bowl 7 times, so a third of those seasons.
That's unreal.
And they've been to the playoffs 15 out of 21 of those seasons. So I think it's a tradition thing. When I really stopped to think about it, that brought a lot more Broncos fans. Because I thought location initially too, but man, we were on the bus on the way to the stadium, and you had people from Arizona, people from New York, people from Georgia. I mean, all wearing Broncos stuff. And I mean, you'd think Georgia's Carolina territory.
Oh, yeah.
It just wasn't. I think there was a
South
tradition.
Carolina
to
separates it.
Right.
Well, I think probably the average age and also average income of a Broncos fan is much higher than that of a Carolina Panthers fan. As you said, the Broncos have just been around a lot longer. And then also Carolina, with the young studs and stuff, that whole team mentality that they have of having fun and stuff, obviously we talked about this before, appeals more to a younger audience, and younger people don't have the money it takes to go to a Super Bowl.
I think that's a really good point, Brent. I think that probably maybe the larger contingent of people our age watching at home, or people watching at home in general, were rooting for Carolina. But at the game, I was surprised. At the game, it was, I said 5-1 initially. It was probably closer to 4-1.
Yeah.
But no, there was definitely a slant in the crowd. So, meaning we were very involved in the game, which I appreciated. But I have to caveat anything I'm going to say by noting that, I mean, I was rooting for one of the teams, and while I have always, as a sports fan, tried to separate myself and look at things through a third person point of view, I was a fan of a certain team at the game, and above all else, I was concerned with how the game would end. I mean, I had a vested interest in that.
Right.
That being said, I had always thought that I would, and you hear people say this all the time, I'm a huge football fan. I want to go to one Super Bowl before I die. I want to experience that. You don't really hear that with like the NBA Finals. I mean, sure, if someone handed you a ticket, you'd go.
Right.
Same with the World Series and stuff. But people always say, no, I have to go to a Super Bowl. It's a bucket list thing, I'm here to say definitively now, and this may be different for Ryan because what do you say, Brent? He's too afraid to pick a team.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, he's too afraid to pick a team.
Yeah.
Taking shots.
We all know that.
But whoa, for like you and I, if you just go to a Super Bowl with two teams that are playing that you don't really care about, given the amount of money it costs to go, you feel like it was a total waste, I'd imagine, right away, because you are immediately engulfed by corporate America. You're immediately engulfed by I don't know, maybe one of the most corporate organizations in all of the world, the NFL, and you're immediately engulfed by them like belittling you as a fan, almost. Like they're, and I'm talking a lot about the festivities in San Francisco at Super Bowl City, the couple days before that we went to, but it's a lot of like you should feel this is a subliminal message, like there's an overlord of the NFL saying this to you, but it's a lot of like
AKA Roger Goodell.
Yeah, it's a lot of like you should feel honored to be at our celebration. This isn't about you. This is about the Super Bowl, the NFL, all the marketing dollars we have and everything. The fact that you have to pay $35 to go into the NFL fan experience and run a 40-yard dash on their sacred Bud Light 40-yard dash field, and it's like that isn't the football experience to me. That's the corporate America experience. And like if they did a celebration of football, like probably what you would get at an unaffiliated venue such as like the Hall of Fame that's not affiliated directly with the NFL, that's a real celebration of football. If they did that at the Super Bowl, I think there would be a real draw where, as a football fan, not a team fan, you would go and you would say, man, this is awesome. But instead it was like the NFL was trying to appeal to their superiority almost and ram down your throat that they were superior. But the problem with that is, like, I think there was a time when the Super Bowl was superior, but now it's like the NFL's superior in money. Like, they're superior in their advertisers and in their ability to draw certain music artists or something like that, you know? So, like, I don't think it was a true celebration of football. And it struck me almost immediately that if I were just a fan of the game, I wouldn't have enjoyed the festivities because it was meant to be a celebration of the masses, but it ended up being a celebration of how much money can the masses spend? How much? I'll tell you the four things that people did more than anything else at the Super Bowl City pregame festivities. They stood in line, whether it be to get in through security or whether it be to get inside the festivities and then stand in line to do whatever. They stood in line, they ate, they drank beer, and they stood around. I mean, that's all they did. And
so
like,
they stood around times two.
Times two, yeah.
They did everything else.
Oh, I'm sorry. The last one, not stood around. They stood in line. They drank beer. They ate. They spent money. It was those four. I mean, there was, and sometimes all these were mingled into one. Like they had an NFL. They had an NFL shop trailer inside of the festivities. Like I traveled all the way to Santa Clara, and I waited my whole life to go to the Super Bowl experience to say, wow, this is. And they get you too, because the first minute you're there, you guys think this is funny. Literally, I mean, we park our car. I had to go to the bathroom, so we walk into the St. Regis, which is one of San Francisco's most luxurious hotels. I'm just looking for a bathroom. I don't even belong in the place. You can tell by what I'm wearing. I walk in, and Hugh Jackson's sitting in a chair, like 10 feet from me. I'm like, "Hi, Coach. How you doing?" I shake his hand. And I'm like, oh, this is it. I said to my mom, I was like, this is a global draw. Like what outside of like you can't even say a concert is that big, because like they can't fit that many people. And so I was like, maybe the Olympics are like this and stuff. And so that was my initial. They draw you in initially. I'm like, oh, I'm going to see every NFL head coach by the end of the day. And it was one of those things where that was the best part of my day. But so they draw you in, and then you quickly realize that, like, there's just a lot of people here. We're not really celebrating anything. It's just a lot of people here because it's not set up for us to do anything but spend our money. And what I was getting to is you get inside, there's a trailer. It's an NFL Shop trailer. Like I couldn't just go online and buy anything I want from NFL Shop. And the line is around 4 blocks. I mean, you could make a square out of the line. And so they waited all the time to get in through security. Then they stand in line to spend money. And then I'm sure there was a Bud Light stand next to it. So then they can spend their money on beer as well. Or maybe they gave the beer away for free. Yeah. But I mean, the whole thing was like
discounted beer.
It's almost like you were celebrating capitalism. Like, I'm serious. It's almost like you were celebrating capitalism.
That's just depressing.
And
I'm never going to a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
no, it's a little upsetting.
What goes on there.
It should be upsetting.
It's a little upsetting. I mean, we didn't spend money to go to, like, we didn't spend the $35 at the experience because, like, I was like, man, how much am I going to sell my soul to the National Football League? But had we just traveled, and I think a lot of people did this, traveled to San Francisco to say, even as a Broncos or Panthers fan, to say, like, I want to soak in what it's like, or as a football fan, and say, I want to soak in what it's like to be around this football celebration. What they ended up being around was, again, a celebration of a global entity that is the NFL. It was not a football celebration in any. I mean, there were people that were excited to see. This might have been the coolest thing, I guess, maybe even to me, that we're excited to see a big glass bubble surrounding the NFL Network set where you couldn't even hear what they were saying. You could just see 50 times further away than I was from Hugh Jackson. You could see people, Chris Rose, on TV talking. and you could see the set. And that was probably the most exciting. And that was a celebration of media, which is, again, a celebration of capitalism and this and this. It was never a football celebration. I just couldn't believe that. And then I'd love to say that went away on game day, but it never really does. You know, people had always said, because I looked into going to the Super Bowl 2 years ago when the Broncos were playing against the Seahawks. I'm glad I didn't go to that game.
Yeah, no kidding.
In New York. And a lot of people noted this to me because it was in New York, but also because it was innate of the Super Bowl as well. They said, this is the Super Bowl is not a football celebration. It's a party. It's a party more than, and it's just one big. I mean, what happens at a party? People stand around, and if someone who'd never had known what a party was saw that, they'd be like, "What the heck is going on here?" People are just standing around in a room, and they're congested with themselves and stuff. And so, and really, I was like, "No, it's not a party. It's football. You know, it's the Super Bowl. It's like we're all here for a game." And I think maybe we all were there for a game, but they didn't set it up to be that way. And the whole idea of, even on game day, of it just being a party manifested itself to the point that, like, I really expected, even inside the stadium, I really expected to have a moment. If I paused and tried to grasp this moment, I really expected to have a moment where I was like, man, this is the imagery that I have in my head of the Super Bowl for the last 20 years of my life, where you see Adam Vinatieri running around after a kick, or you see Willie McGinnis after that Tom Brady Kurt Warner Super Bowl, running onto the field after Vinatieri hits the game winner, or you see the Tyree catch, you know, and you're celebrating the imagery of football. I never got that feel even inside of the stadium. I just got this feel that, like, the NFL was putting the game second and their marketability first. And that was disappointing. It was disappointing.
This is some insight that, like, you rarely get from anybody.
Yeah, right. Well,
like, this is can you tell I was excited to record a separate podcast for this? Because this is even better than I thought it would be.
Well,
this is unbelievable.
And I think there were so many people, too, who, again, I noted how many people were neutral from a rooting interest, even around us in our section. And I looked around, and again, you have to take into account how much the Super Bowl costs to go to when you're discussing all this. Because, like, if it costs $200, who would care about, you know, whether or not how it was marketed or any of that? But they market it as this illustrious experience, like when, like, you are the ultimate football fan if you spend money on this. And there were people who I think wanted to label themselves as that around us in our section, who by the end of the game, you could tell they kind of had like a sullen look on their face, because they were like, man, this is not what I thought it would be. I spent all this money. Like, they're almost like, I have to really soak in these last two quarters, because my team isn't winning a championship at the end of the day today. And the NFL, or not the NFL, the football experience alone just wasn't worth it for them. So
yeah, I'm sure it goes fast too, especially.
Oh, it totally goes fast. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Went slow for me. The last quarter was really slow.
Oh yeah,
slow,
I'm sure,
right?
when they were like, okay, are they going to come back?
Right.
We're only up a score.
No, and I note all this, but I also say that if you have a team playing in the Super Bowl, if you are a huge fan of a specific team, I'd consider going one time, you know, in your life, because like, seeing your team win is something that I didn't appreciate it. I remember thinking that night, man, I didn't appreciate it enough in the present, but that's okay, because it's been a week, and like, I think it's something I'd always wondered. I had never really been alive or I'd been alive, but I'd never been old enough for any of my teams to win a title. Mm-hmm. So I'd always wondered, do you feel this sense of completion immediately and then you like move on? But no, it's a lingering thing. It's like for 2 months you're like, you go back to it. You know, it's a futuristic thing. It's not something you appreciate as much in the moment. But and I think that's worth it if you have a team that you have a rooting interest in. But aside from that, man, I just watch it on TV. You know, watch the game itself, and just treat.
You'd be better off with festivities from your apartment or home.
Yeah, I think the better part of the Super Bowl is whatever they give you on TV, like the imagery of it that you expect to feeling encompassed by, but you're not encompassed by it. You just they don't treat you as a football fan. They treat you as a soldier of the National Football League.
Gosh, yeah.
Wow.
My dad went
depressing.
to Super Bowl II with his dad. I really wonder. I'll have to ask him what the atmosphere was like.
I'm sure it was so much different.
Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah, how different it was. Like if they had activities for people that weren't, and maybe they charged, but it wasn't like a big expensive thing, or like what the atmosphere was like. Way back.
Well, I just
then.
got done reading Al Michaels' book, and Al Michaels was living. They played those first Super Bowls. Was that in L.A. when your dad went?
I don't
at
know.
The Rose Bowl. Oh. Well, Al Michaels. Al Michaels was living in L.A. I think he went to Super Bowl I because it was at the Rose Bowl, and he wrote about it in his book, and he talked about half the stadium wasn't even totally full. And,
all right.
It was played in the afternoon, and it was just a game more than anything else. But it started the legacy of Super Bowls. I mean, it's inevitable that something like that is going to. And people gave me a counterpoint to this. They're like, if the Super Bowl wasn't an elitist thing, then you wouldn't have to pay the money you would pay, and then everyone could go and it would lose its lust. No one would care. Like, okay, he went to the Super Bowl. Everybody's done that. It is supposed to be an elitist thing, but it's supposed to be an elitist football thing, and it's inevitable that something like the Super Bowl snowballs into this like global event, but it should never lose the inherent aspects of it being a football game at the end of the day, and I think that's what it was. That's what Al Michaels talked about, it being a football game. And now if you're there, I don't know if it's as much a football game or if it's something that it's like sensory overload. It's just supposed to be here, lights,
flashiness,
camera,
throw all this stuff out there, fluff it up, and I bet you there are probably people out there, conspiracy theorists, who say, well, the NFL is doing that just so that way they can build themselves up as much as possible before the downfall happens. Because, we talked about this in the regular show. The injuries, concussions, all this stuff, this new information that we're gathering about post-NFL life is now starting to, and you said it, it's dislodging things that we thought were in place with the NFL. And now you're telling me what the Super Bowl is like. It's like, man, they're like, it seems like it's a counteraction to what's going on with the information that we are learning and digesting or trying to digest about players post NFL life.
Like they're squeezing the last
they're trying to basically build
Yeah.
themselves up as high and as much as they can, so that way they can absorb the, I don't want to say destruction, but the things that attack the basis in which the NFL stands upon. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
they're trying to be able to become so big that they're indestructible.
Well, there's always, in addition, there's always going to be. I mean, you can't ask for an event to not have sensory overload.
Of course, of course.
But it was just a matter of like the way that they went about it. Like they didn't. It was almost like they didn't put any effort into doing anything but appeasing their sponsors. And I don't want to call the people who stood in those lines sheep, because like they were like, well, I got to do something. Because like for example, my mother and I, we get into the Super Bowl festivities on Saturday. We, after standing in line all day, and we're there for like 45 minutes, and we walk around and we're like, well, if we don't pick a line to stand in the rest of the day, we don't have anything really to do. If we don't spend money. And so I think everyone else was like, I don't want to call them sheep, but they were like, well, we're here, so like we got to stand in one of these lines. And it was just like a slap in the face to like it's almost like the NFL didn't put any effort in because they knew they didn't have to. They're like, we'll just set up all these booths and turn it into it was a street fair for like a street fair for
the upper class.
Yeah. And like, but not even, because there was no culture to it. It was just a street fair for people who want to take their wallet out and put money towards it. And that was the saddest part about the festivities. I mean, I was disappointed in that. I don't think I would ever want to go back to a Super Bowl for that alone. But I mean, the sensory aspects had their perks at the same time. I mean, we were walking down the street on the day of the game and on the way to the stadium, and we were kind of stopped at an intersection for cars to go by, and a golf cart was approaching me on my right side, and out of the corner of my eye, I'm looking into the golf cart, and I realize that it's Tim Tebow sitting in the golf cart, and they stopped. They stopped the traffic, so the golf cart had to stop as well. They stopped the traffic going the other way and told us to walk. You follow me? And so, man, when Tebow was a Bronco, it was impossible to even get within 20 feet. I remember that Tebow Mania thing. You couldn't get within 20 feet. And there I am looking at him out of the corner of my eye, and I go, "Hey, Tim Tebow." And he doesn't hear me at first. I'm like, "Tim Tebow." And he looks at me, and I shake his hand. And I'm like, "Oh, that was cool." You know, I just shook Tim Tebow's hand. And
Brent Bond floors.
No one had,
I would pay any price.
No one had noticed that he was sitting there besides me, so no one went up to hound him. So he shook my hand and whatnot. So those sensory aspects of it are cool,
right?
But as far as an experience as a whole, if I tried to put myself in a third person perspective from it, or of it, it was disappointing to say the least. And I'll tell you what, because we're gonna move into this anyway, so I'll just transition it myself. The biggest insult to people who go to the game is the halftime show. That is the biggest insult. You didn't
like it?
No, because
I was just going to have you like give a quick, it was good, it was bad thing. You didn't like it.
Ryan, I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear the halftime show, first of all, because the PA system was, that's the first part. The PA system was so bad. This is separate to my overall point, but the PA system was so bad in the stadium that you couldn't hear the halftime show. We couldn't hear the PA most of the evening. But the PA system was so bad that we couldn't hear anything anyway. But that's as moot to my overall point.
Right.
My overall point is that you're sitting, they do the whole thing where they have to instruct us on how to use our cards. For the show.
Oh, God. I was wondering if you took part in that.
Well, it was funny because in the video they said the video was again an example of them treating us like we're just soldiers of the NFL. They've got 12 people sitting in an empty stadium, and they've all got their cards in their hand, and it says, "During stunt 1, make sure you hold your card in front of your face."
So this was like at the beginning of halftime as they were setting up.
They did this at the first quarter break. They played this video.
Okay, at the end of the first quarter.
Right.
Okay.
And it's like they've got specific, just the way they worded it. Like they give us our little placard, and it says in big bold letters, "Do not open until halftime." And it's like, I'm like, I paid for this placard. I can open it whenever I want to open it. And so they're telling us in this video, hold the placard in front of your head, and so that you're looking out of the little slit. And they're like, "Do not," and it's flashing on the screen, "Do not hold the placard above your head throughout this skit." So what do you think I did? I held it above my head through the whole skit. But part of that too was like, oh man. And this is my overall point, the marketability of the NFL throughout the game and of the halftime show in particular. They want me to, Ryan, everyone in that stadium paid a fortune to go to that game. They wanted us to watch the halftime show through a 2x1-inch slit on a card. That's how we were supposed to think about that. That's how we were supposed to watch the halftime show during those skits, so that TV could see
this amazing thing.
Yeah, this sun and stuff. And I get it. You're marketing to TV and stuff, but make the experience enjoyable for me. Without me, there is no NFL. I'm paying the money to go to the game. Without me, there is no Super Bowl.
Exactly, yeah.
And they didn't. The PA system was like my car stereo was better than the PA system in the stadium. They want me to watch the halftime show out of this little hole. And it's crazy to see. When you think of a concert, you think of spontaneity, right. So it's supposed to be spontaneous. And when you have a concert that's staged for television, there was no spontaneous element to it at all. Like even the ushers are standing there clapping their hands in cadence the whole time. And if they break, you can tell that like they might get fired because
Oh, wow.
the NFL said you have to clap this way the whole time, and you have to create this entirely staged atmosphere for a concert.
This is incredible.
And it's like, it's and I tweeted about all this. I don't know if you saw that.
I
it was
probably
the only part of
I saw a couple, but
it was the only part of the game really that I tweeted during was the halftime show, because I thought that was totally indicative of the problems throughout the weekend with them treating us like we're just there for the show.
Mm-hmm.
We're just there for this NFL show, and we're just sitting there blindly, like, feed me. Feed me these, whatever you want to feed me.
feed me
NFL.
beer and food.
Right,
I stand in line, give you money.
And I guess I had always bought into that a little bit. But I'll tell you what what was crazy about the halftime show is I'm looking around the stadium, especially in the upper bowl where we were. 25% of the stands was in the bathroom during the halftime show because they didn't care. And I realized that, like, people who pay money to go to the Super Bowl, they don't care about the halftime show. So, like, obviously you have to have a halftime show, but pander to us a little bit, I just felt like we were totally, and man, people are going to listen to this and say, you got to go to the Super Bowl and you're complaining about the NFL pandering to you, but you get what I'm saying about,
The NFL has an image to uphold.
Right,
and they're going
exactly.
to do every single thing possible to make sure that happens.
And I'm throwing the privilege I had to go out the window and just trying to evaluate for someone who would speculatively want to go in the future. And I don't know that if it's the experience that you think it is in your mind, because, I think had they had a camera on, instead of Coldplay, on the stands during the halftime show, there would never be a Super Bowl halftime show again. Because they'd be like, man, these people are bored. They're not being... There's a halftime show at halftime, but there's nothing about football throughout the game other than the snaps itself, which you could go pay any lesser amount of money on any given Sunday and watch that. So I was disappointed in all that. I thought that it was overall indicative of what term did I use in the regular podcast? The NFL's extreme ability to market itself. So
Wow. This makes me now love the World Series even more.
The World Series was great.
Doesn't mess around.
Great.
They're not, there's no time to do, they try as they might to do, the God bless America in the 7th inning stretch. It's like,
but even that is a celebration. Even that is a celebration of traditional baseball.
True,
it's a celebration of traditional.
But and I think my point with that is they don't turn it into what the NFL does, the halftime show, where they make it, they try to do everything in their will to appeal to people who are, going to be, I guess, distracted by flashiness and awe. Like a lot of our generation is. We're so easily, everybody but us, is easily attracted to, flashiness and this all,
That's a great point.
Big pop, stuff that pops out at you and gets your attention. Like, ooh, look at that over there. And, we just, draw to it immediately. Baseball doesn't do that exactly. Like baseball, they just go about their thing,
That's a great point, and that may be inherent of the two sports anyway, but I don't think it is, because I've probably been to... I'm closing in on 50 NFL games now. We have season tickets, so
right.
I have the ability to go to more than a lot of people. And I don't think that the NFL has ever struck me as the word I'm about to use, aside from this Super Bowl game. It was fleeting. It was, and I think you make a good cultural point too about like how fleeting our generation is. Anyway, take in the left ear. 20 minutes later, go out the right ear.
Exactly.
And baseball as a sport is not fleeting because you have so much time to reevaluate, reassess. Okay, and football is as well. You have the huddle to reassess. All right, moving on from the last play, moving on to the next pitch, So football should never be fleeting like it was in the game. And I said this, when Brent was still in the room, I said, it's almost something that you couldn't appreciate in the moment. That's like the only football game that I was like, man, I can't appreciate the moment of it as much. I have to like appreciate it after the fact, because and it's a good thing I'm still able to do that, or else it would just have been a fleeting experience to me, because I agree with what you're saying, Ryan. It's pandering to this fleeting mentality that we as a generation live our lives by anyway anymore. And so I agree with you on that. And as someone, you brought up the World Series, interestingly, I've now been to the World Series and the Super Bowl in the last 5 months. And I can assess one versus the other. And man, the World Series was about the baseball game. It was a celebration of
and it always is
baseball, right?
And that's why
it's a baseball game.
It's not as we get like guys like Colin Cowherd criticizing. I couldn't even find what TV channel it was on. Like, so what?
Because they don't care about pandering to that, right?
You still have the radio.
Yeah.
You heard of that thing? I mean, you're on it. You should know what it is.
Well, and they call it the Fall Classic for a reason.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
Exactly.
It's a classic thing. It'll always have its classicism to it.
And everybody's like saying about how the World Series is, it's just boring. Baseball losing fans. Yeah, because we're actually real. Baseball fans are real.
Right. They're not soldiers of the NFL.
Exactly. We're not in the NFL where it's about flash and pop and ooh and ah and woo and no, that's not real. We want something real. People want real relationships. They don't want girls who are going to be on their phones and like taking selfies and crap and all this other stuff. Like, real relationship. As sports fans, we want a real experience, and that is baseball.
Right.
There's nothing more real than Major League Baseball, whether it be in the postseason or it be in the regular season, And I'm not saying that the NFL isn't, but from what you've just been describing to me, it's kind of like, what in the world are they doing?
Well,
it's like the most drastic difference between a fun sporting event and something that you can't even relate to on everyday life because it's not real.
I've had this internal debate for a couple of years now of like, do you have to staunchly say that I will only be a baseball fan and I will only have this realism that you're talking about, and then the NFL, and its frivolity cannot be part of my life, and
right.
I think it's fine to be frivolous from time to time.
Oh yeah,
but the amount of money spent in that game to be frivolous,
oh my God,
is not worth it.
Just forget it. You could forget about that.
Yeah. Oh. I don't think anyone, even the people who live on frivolity, which is a lot of our generation, I don't think any of them would spend the amount of money spent to be frivolous, because you're spending that money to go celebrate realism and to celebrate football, and it just wasn't there. That was disappointing.
Yeah. This is great insight from Matt Rigby. Wrapping this up, I just want to get your thoughts. You think Peyton Manning is done?
Man, I sure hope so.
Yeah.
Because what else? I mean, this is so cliche. It's so cliche. But what else does he have to play for?
Exactly, yeah.
Sometimes cliches exist because you're like, okay, that one makes sense. And what makes sense in a career like that is to retire after winning a Super Bowl.
At the end of his contract.
Right.
He's 39
Well,
years
he's got
old.
one more year on his Broncos contract.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, but the thing is, the Broncos will cut him. And I don't think they'll think twice about it, because Peyton's owed $21 million next year. They have a lot of guys to pay. And you'd be paying, I don't have to explain this to you, but you'd be paying premium money for one more year at most. Of Peyton Manning, and it just wouldn't be worth it from a long-term perspective. It wouldn't be the smart way to run their business. It wouldn't be a good business decision. So, I mean, we all saw Peyton Manning this year. We saw what his skills have become. Do you think that he could go to a team that has, I mean, the Broncos were the best defense in the NFL this year. Do you think he could go to a team that has, let's say, maybe even the 10th or 11th best defense, and with his skills still look graceful?
I'd say the Rams.
Maybe the Rams. People brought up the Rams.
And honestly, that makes a little bit of sense, because the Rams defense is very good. Well, they're not at the Broncos level, not at Panthers level, but they're a part of the NFC West. And the NFC West is known for stellar defenses, whether it be Seattle's complete package, the Cardinals secondary and their front four, The 49ers still have a good front seven in general. They're getting weaker as time goes on. The Rams are they are fourth place, but their defense on a scale, I would say, is probably number 10.
Yeah, probably about number 10.
Yeah.
And they have a running game. I think that's part of it, too.
Exactly.
They have Gurley. So
the only thing that's missing is a quarterback who can throw to not high-level wide receivers of a dangerous capacity, if that makes sense, but do like the Patriots have done. Tom Brady, up there in age, he's throwing to mid-level wide receivers like Julian Edelman or Danny Amendola. That's not Calvin Johnson. Mm-hmm. That's not Larry Fitzgerald. It's not, anybody of that magnitude. It's just regular wide receivers, and Tom Brady turned them into great wide receivers because it's Tom Brady. Peyton Manning, I think, could do the same thing for the Rams. They're not in St. Louis anymore, so we just call them the Rams. But I think they could. I think it could work.
Well, see, I don't know about that because, let's take a moment and think about the Super Bowl itself. I don't think the victory was in spite of 18 like it has been at other times this year, but he literally had no impact on the game. He wasn't terrible,
right?
But he had no impact. I don't think. He completed 13 passes. And I almost there's a difference between if you put him in LA, I guess we can call him LA. Yeah, you put him in LA.
That's where they're going.
Right. You put him in LA because they're the 10th best defense and because Gurley's still young and because their O-line is average at best. He has to do more than complete 13 passes a game. And I don't know if he can do that anymore. I've watched Peyton for the last 4 years now. Mm-hmm. And even in the last 4, obviously post-neck surgery, he didn't have the zip. He just hadn't from the start. Mm-hmm. But even in the last 4 years, there's been a year-to-year regression of, watching how much zip the ball has.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff like that. And so, I am so big on... I don't know why I'm big on this, because it shouldn't matter to me. We talked about... we talked about sanctimony in the regular podcast. Right. This has more to do with legacy. Mm-hmm. But I am so big on athletes of Peyton Manning's caliber finishing gracefully. I think that I've always been so big on that.
Jerome Bettis did that with the Steelers.
Right.
Super Bowl.
Ray Lewis.
Ray
Lewis finished
Lewis
gracefully.
did the same thing, yeah.
John Elway finished gracefully.
Exactly.
He won a Super Bowl, and he's like,
the list goes on and on.
Right, and so I'm so big on that. I don't want to see it be MJ going to the Wizards, or Brett Favre going to the Jets. I know Favre then goes to Minnesota and is better there, but when Favre was with the Jets, you're like, oh, this is hard to watch.
Yeah, it's not as interesting.
Peyton going to Denver was surprisingly...
it was great.
Yeah, surprisingly, I can't think of the word, but they got a lot out of it. Mm-hmm. Surprisingly generous, I guess, to both him and the Broncos. And I think that's just, it was almost more than you could have even asked for. It's storybook, it's fairy tale. Mm-hmm. He should wrap it up. And here's another thing, one last thing. Peyton played half the games this year.
Yeah.
Who's to say if he plays one more year with anyone? And any team that I was talking about this with somebody, they asked me if he goes somewhere else after being cut, and he was due to make $21 million. Mm-hmm. What is that other team? What's his price tag for another team for 1 year? I'm thinking 14 at least. He's got to be at least 14.
Considering what Peyton Manning did this past season, now granted, I would say.
Considering how many
hurt and he had that time to heal and regroup and practice and get himself back into as good a shape as it could be, and to do that, it's like, okay, that's good, but you got hurt.
But
and you had time to regroup.
If you're Peyton at the negotiation table with another team, you could just say, think about how many tickets I'm selling you. I'm Peyton Manning. I'm going to sell you tickets. That should be worth a certain amount of $1 million in itself. Yeah. And so I honestly think, let's just say it's 14. Let's say it's 13. I don't think he can make it through a season. So you're asking a team to pay $13-14 million for 8 games with one quarterback.
That's the thing. It's like you have to make it through the whole season, not just start out, make it through, and then you get hurt, you sit out a little bit, your team barely makes it through, you come back, and now greatness has come back. Like, there's no guarantee.
Not a lot of teams
you know?
have a backup Brock Osweiler's caliber that can go 5-2 in the 7 games that Peyton sits out and still get you the number 1 seed.
I'd say that probably the one team that comes to mind for me is Chase Daniel and the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. If Alex Smith gets hurt, Chase Daniel's kind of proven he can get it done.
Right.
But that's like the only guy that comes to mind. I can't think, maybe like if the Packers with Aaron Rodgers getting hurt, and all of a sudden here comes Matt Flynn, and Matt Flynn's just torching people. I mean, maybe that's another case, but that was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
You can't find that nowadays.
I mean, we're speaking speculatively about...
you can't find somebody to do as well as what we've seen in the past. Because Chase Daniels, a couple of years ago, Matt Flynn was the year before that. Brock Osweiler, A.J. McCarron skated through on ice that was cracking, but it wasn't that thin, They were getting by until better scenarios came along for their teams, as in Peyton Manning returns. Wow, man. Andy Dalton. Yeah, Andy Dalton comes back. Andy Dalton didn't come back. Peyton Manning did, and we saw exactly what happened for both of those teams.
I mean, we're talking about all this speculatively about, if Peyton re-signs somewhere, does he make it through a season, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And every additional piece of speculation that we put on this, I think, is proof in and of itself that he should hang him up. Yeah, he should hang him up.
Yeah.
And I think that I think he will. I think he will hang him up because I go back to what he said to Belichick. Peyton seems like a pretty calculated guy when he says things to people, and when he said this may be my last rodeo, I think he and I are already kind of made up that it's gonna be his last rodeo, and what a career, it's a remarkable career as a football player. I'm partially selfish in this too. I hope I got to see his last game, and there was, despite all the talk I made about sometimes not being able to appreciate the moment, I made certain to take multiple times or multiple instances and look at 18 on the field, even his drop backs, even in pregame warm-ups, his throws to the sideline, his preparation routines, and say, I got to watch this my whole life, and whether it be on TV or in person, and this is the last time, and I'm gonna tip my cap to him for that. And I hope that he was done, or I hope that he's done, because he looks done, and what a situation for him. 2 years ago, you'd have said, "Man, Denver's a long way away. They lost 42-8. They completely flipped that team on their heels and got him a ring within his window. The Broncos had the Peyton Manning window to win him one more ring, and they did. No matter how they did it. So I hope he hangs him up for that reason.
I do too. That's Matt Rigby. That's great stuff from him. Great insight from Matt going to the Super Bowl. This was so much better. This podcast was so much better than I could have possibly imagined. Great stuff from him. Facebook.com/delayofgame, at DOG_podcast on Twitter, and our website where this podcast will be, the delayofgamepodcast.wordpress.com. We will see you on next week's regular show. Hope you enjoyed. 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 Hope you enjoyed.